The Grinch Stole Christmas by Dr. Seuss. Suing every who down in Whoville like Christmas so hot. But the Grinch, who lived just north of Whoville, did not. The Grinch hated Christmas, the whole Christmas season. Now please don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason. It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right. It could be perhaps that his shoes were too tight. But I think the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. But whatever the reason, his heart or his shoes, he stood there on Christmas Eve hating the Whos, staring down from his cave with a sore, grinchy frown at the warm lighted windows below in their town. For he knew that every who down in Whoville beneath was busy now hanging a mistletoe wreath, and they are hanging their stockings. He snarled with a sneer. Tomorrow's Christmas is practically here. Then he growled, with his Grinch fingers nervously drumming. I must find some way to stop Christmas from coming. For tomorrow he knew all the Who girls and boys would wake bright and early. They'd rush for their toys. And then, oh the noise, noise. That's one thing he hated. The noise. Then the Whos, young and old, would sit down to a feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast. Feast. And they would feast on Who pudding and read the Who roast feast, which was something the Grinch couldn't stand at in the least. And then they'd do something he liked least of all. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, would stand close together with Christmas bells ringing, and they'd stand in hand, and the Whos would start singing. They'd sing and they'd sing and they'd sing. And the more the Grinch thought of this Who Christmas sing, the more the Grinch thought, I must stop the whole thing. Why, 3 years. I've put up with it now. I must stop this Christmas from coming. But how? Then he got an idea, an awful idea. The Grinch got a wonderful, awful idea. I know that what we are going to do. The Grinch laughed in his throat, and he made a quick Santa Claus hat and a coat. And he chuckled and chuckled for the great Grinchy trick. With just this coat and this hat, I look just like Saint Nick. All I need is a reindeer. The Grinch looked around, but since the reindeer are scarce, there was none to be found. Did that stop the old Grinch? No, the Grinch simply said. If I can't find a reindeer, I'll make one instead. So he called his dog Max. Then he took some red thread and he tied a big horn on the top of his head. Then he loaded some bags and some old empty sacks on a rushmackle sleigh, and he hitched up old Max. Then the Grinch said, Giddy up! And the sleigh stared down toward the home where the Who lay a snooze in their town. All the windows were dark, quite snow filled the air. All the Whos were all dreaming sweet dreams without care. When he came to the first little house on the square, this is stop number 1. The old Grinchy Claus hissed and climbed on the roof, empty bags at his fist. Then he slid down the chimney, a rather tight pinch, but if Santa could do it, then so could the Grinch. Got stuck only once for a moment or two, then he stuck his head out of the fireplace flew. Where the little Who stockings all hung in a row, these stockings, he grinned, are the first things to go. Then he slithered and slunk with a smile most unpleasant around the whole room, and he took every present. Popguns and bicycles, roller skates, drums, checkerboards, tricycles, popcorns, and plums. And he stuffed them in bags. Then the Grinch very nimbly stuffed all the bags one by one up the chimney. Then he slunk to the icebox. He took the Who's feast, he took the Who pudding, he took the roast beast. He cleaned out that icebox as quick as a flash. Why, that Grinch even took their last can of Who hash. Then he stuffed all the food up the chimney with glee. And now, grinned the Grinch, I will stuff up the tree. And the Grinch grumbled a tree then, and he started to shove, and he heard a small sound like a coo of a dove. He turned around fast, and he saw a small Who. A little clingy Who was not more than 2. The Grinch had been caught by this tiny Who daughter, who'd got out of bed for a cup of cold water. She stared at the Grinch and said, Santa Claus, why are you taking our Christmas tree? Why? But you know that the old Grinch was so smart and so slick, he thought up a lie and thought it up quick. Why, my sweet little tot, the fake Santa Claus lied. There's a light on the street that won't light on the other side. So I'm taking it home to my workshop, my dear. I'll fix it up there, then I'll bring it back here. And his fib fooled the child. Then he patted her head and got a drink and sent her to bed. And when Cindy Lou Who went to bed with her cup, he went to the chimney and stuffed the tree up. The last thing he took was a log for their fire, and he went up the chimney himself with the old liar. On the walls were left nothing but hooks and some wire. And the one speck of food that he left in the house was a crumb that was even too small for a mouse. Then he did the same thing to the other Who's houses, leaving crumbs much too small for the other Who's mouses. It was 15:15 dawn, all the Who's still abed, all the Who's still asnooze, when he packed up his sled. Packed it up with their presents, the ribbons, the wrappings, the tags, and the tinsel, the trimmings, the trappings. I don't know what the trappings doing here. 3,000 feet up the slide of Mr. Crumpet. He rode push, push, poo, poo to the whose he was came without packages, boxes, or bags. That was my mother. And he puzzled 3 hours till the puzzler was sore. Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before. Maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas perhaps means a little bit more. And what happened then? Well, in Whoville, they say then that the Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day. And that minute his heart didn't feel quite so tight. He whizzed with his load in the bright morning light, and he brought back the toys and the food for the feast, and he himself, the Grinch, carved the roast beast.